And our next segment of the Zoom tonight is a bit of a celebration of Anne M. Carson, I think you could say. Anne Carson, as for many of you who will know, but let me say again, is a very dear friend of mine and poetry colleague. So it's absolutely with great delight that I welcome her here tonight. She's also been a great supporter of Liquid Amber right from its inception. In fact, 2 years ago, in 2021, when we had a brief interstice between lockdowns, Anne launched Liquid Amber Press. So we had a little event, and Anne was the one who cracked the bottle. So that was much appreciated. But tonight we're very pleased to say that Anne has now become a Liquid Amber Press author, and we're here to celebrate her new book, The Detective's Chair, which is a collection of playful and quirky poems about Anne's favourite detectives. She's about to tell us more about that. And one of the really lovely things about this book is that it's been beautifully illustrated by Renee Carrasco. Renee, I think you might be in the gallery somewhere, but welcome. And absolutely a great privilege to have Renee's art alongside Anne's poetry, which makes it a really, really wonderful object and experience, actually. So we're here to celebrate Anne tonight. She's actually having an in-person launch of The Detective's Chair next month. So I'll tell you more about the details for that. But this is a feature to give you a bit of a taster, and for those of you who aren't in Melbourne, to give you a sense of what The Detective's Chair is all about. So Anne, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks so much, Rose. It's wonderful to have a little gig in this feast of poetry. There have been wonderful poems, and it's great to hear them. First off, I'd like to thank Rose and Pauline so much for becoming my publisher. It's really exciting to have a new book out, and it was such a delight working with them. I think the thing that I felt the most was obviously through Rose's particular experience. Their commitment to the poet shone through at every point. And that's not something, unfortunately, that poets can rely on getting with a publisher. So it's been really wonderful to have that process with them. And the book itself is wonderful. I tried holding it up to the microphone, but alas, it doesn't really work. So you can't see the beautiful quality of the paper, the illustrations, the wonderful parchment paper inside. I've always wanted to have some parchment paper, sort of end notes and beginning notes, and this volume has it. So that's really, really lovely. I also love how the illustrations have come up. Renee was someone who was recommended by a friend, and Renee and I met for the first time 2 days ago. So we did this whole process, a lot of it over lockdown by email. And it was an absolutely fascinating and wonderful process, because I'd never done it before. I'd never collaborated with an illustrator. And I'd give Renee the poem, and he would use his drawing skill, but also his intuition as well. And so many of the poems explore intuition, and it was wonderful to see that came into our process with the illustrations. We had a great time together. It was great fun. And I think actually that's one of the things I like most about the book. It's a very serious subject, but it's dealt with in a playful way. And I'd also just want to thank Anne Elvey, who was the one who first suggested to me, one of my workshop buddies, that maybe these poems, because of the visuals of the chair, that they could be illustrated. So I took her advice, and here we are. So I called the work The Detective's Chair because it was in their favourite chair or equivalent, their log, their cushion on the floor, behind the wheel of their car, that these detectives did their crime solving. At the end of a hard day, kicking back, letting their mind roam over the case. And it became this chair, these various chairs, a metaphor for creative problem solving. The book has been in process for a very long time, almost as long as I've been addicted to reading detective fiction. I've been asking myself why I read them so avidly, and actually feeling degrees of shame for being addicted to what's considered to be a pretty lowbrow form of literature. So my writing of the poems was sort of inquiring into that. What did I find so compelling? I wrote the first in the series about 3 detectives, Wallander, Rebus, and Svensson, in 2012. And they were published in my first poetry collection, Removing the Kimono. So I want to introduce the poems to you by reading the kind of thing which set my antenna thrumming. It's from the St. Petersburg Mystery Series by R.N. Morris, and it features a corpulent, nicotine-addicted detective, Porfiry Petrovich Razumikin. And this quote is from A Gentle Axe. Porfiry says, quote, "Incidentally, I do not believe these mysteries are solved rationally through the exercise of a cold, deductive reasoning. The thing that terrifies me is that I don't know how they are solved. One must go to a place within oneself. It's a kind of Siberia of the soul. In the criminal, it is the place where these deeds are conceived and carried through. But we all have a similar place within us, or so I believe." As a poet, when I write, I don't exactly go to a Siberia of the soul, but I go somewhere akin to it, a place inside that's remote from day-to-day transactional preoccupations. So these sorts of quotes would kickstart my creative process and make me realize that the kind of detectives that I really like, they solve crimes in a similar manner to how I solve creative problems in poetry writing. So here's the poem which resulted. And Rose, if you could put it up, that'd be great. Just a word on the layout. In a nod to the sonnet form, each poem in the collection is a 14-line prose poem. Each has a title, then the detective's name, their title, the name of their office or bureau, and where it's located. Finding his Elan. Porfiry Petrovich Razumikin, investigating magistrate, Haymarket District Police Bureau, St. Petersburg, Russia. Leaning back, he takes a long, slow toke, drawing chemical balm into his being. Inside the lung, alveoli, permeable, grape-like, open to osmosis. His eyelids quiver closed while he savors the fleeting ecstatic moment floating on waves of well-being. As the drug reaches his brain, his mind ratchets up a gear, honing in on the current crime. He tracks the facts to find the missing link, the new angle that will open the case like a packed portmanteau. Then, Siberia of the soul, the place inside himself, mirror of the place from which the killer kills, where he solves the crime. Sometimes only cravings save him from the total lethargy induced by blood, gore, and betrayal. Never just smoking, but rather sacred ritual, professional duty, an hourly titration. Puff by puff, he is invigorated, regains his curiosity, Elan. He just can't think clearly without a certain dosage on board. To himself, he's vaguely ridiculous. Unnicotined, he'd be totally absurd. Thanks, Rose. I got a bit carried away with smoking there, as you can see. A no-no these days for obvious health reasons, but it's a great trope for something which flicks the mind switch, as I put it in another poem. I loved the opportunity that this project gave me to explore states of mind and niggles and inklings and hunches and all the things which help detectives solve crimes and how they mirror the kinds of things which help me write poems. Like Porphyry, we know that poems do not get written through the exercise of a cold deductive reasoning. I think this project also was a way to validate creative modes of knowing. There are obviously many different kinds of intelligence, and creative people demonstrate a kit bag of skills. Each detective in this series draws on a different way of knowing. Unsurprisingly, intuition and all the different ways this shows up is common. And embodied knowing is one of these ways of experiencing intuition. And the next poem I'm going to read is from a book, the first in the Maisie Dobbs series, written by Jacqueline Winspear. Maisie's a most unusual young woman. After her mother dies, she's sent into service to help the family make ends meet. She's taken under the wing of Lady Compton, who sends her to Girton College. She meets and becomes a pupil and later an apprentice of the investigator Maurice Blanche. She also learns meditation from a teacher called Carson. So this quote, which got me going, is from a book simply called Maisie Dobbs. The sun was high in the sky by the time Maisie came out of the post office. And as she touched the door handle of the MG, it was warm enough to cause her to flinch. Pay attention, Maurice had always cautioned her. Pay attention to the reactions of your body. It's the wisdom of the self speaking to you. Be aware of concern, of anticipation, of all the feelings that come from the self. They manifest in the body. What is their counsel? Thanks, Rose. So this one's called Through the Wound. Miss Maisie Dobbs, psychologist and investigator, London, post-World War I. Maisie's chair is a cushion on the floor. Cross-legged, the way Khan taught, she clears her mind of everyday detritus until it runs still and true. Sometimes in the car, sometimes gently rocking in the cradle of a train, on the floor of a hotel room or her own Holland Park flat. Wherever she is, Maisie progresses cases by tuning in. Intuition for her is through the wound. The scar from the Great War on the back of her neck niggles when she's in danger. An electric spark telling her she's close. She practices the forensic science of the whole person, as Maurice Blanche taught, from parlourmaid to his apprentice. Her most precious insight, that inside the destroyer, something is already ravaged. This time, the reporter was stabbed with her own pencil sharpening knife. Maisie listens as Dame Constance Charteris counselled, with the ear of her heart. She doesn't kowtow to bullies, is brave and wise in humans' often tortured ways. I love that, the ear of the heart. And may there be more listening in the world like that. Apart from other benefits, this project gave me license, freed from embarrassment, to read the detective fiction I enjoy, character-driven, with interesting angles on ways of knowing and crime problem solving. I'd also like to remember Geordie Albiston, who was a friend and colleague, and it was she who suggested I write my own detective poet poem, and I have, the last in the series. Thanks, Rose. This one's called Pocket of Contemplation. Anne M. Carson, poet, DI, Chelsea, Australia. Her chair is red like her wine, capacious enough so she can curl, cat-like, in its folds. It's dusk, and the dead bodies of failed poems lie scattered around. She can't deal with bloody dismemberment just yet. Right now, she wants to follow where the new poem spore leads, quick on its heels to prevent escape. Later, engine throb throws her into reverie. She's pillion on the motorcycle, letting the world and all responsibility whiz past. The great clock stalls. A pocket of contemplation opens. Nothing is expected of her except presence. Speed awakens the kind of attention poems long for, razor sharp and rambling at the same time. Here she finds freedom, and in daily beach walks, calibrated to waves' constancy and the far horizon's seductive call. Rarely found at desks foursquare, she likes life best when thoughts think her rather than the other way around. Without distraction, ideas flock. So I'm going to finish by reading a snippet from the last series I've got waylaid by, the Cormoran Strike series by Robert Galbraith, which is a nom de plume for J.K. Rowling and features a one-legged, ruggedly handsome, so we're told, Strike and his smart, brave partner, Robin Ellicott. And this quote is from The Career of Evil. Quote, then the sound of, then the sound of the mother's voice caused a sudden explosive chain reaction in Strike's brain, lighting a landing strip for a theory he knew with the certainty of a prophet would lead to the killer. I don't know how serious I actually am, and I haven't told my publisher yet, but I've opened a folder on my computer, which I've called The Detective's Chair, number 2. So this book is dedicated to the late Dorothy Porter, who in The Monkey's Mask put the intersection of detective fiction and poetry on the map. I'm thrilled that Andrea Goldsmith is going to launch it. And thank you very much for listening. I think Rose is going to put the launch details up on the screen, and I warmly invite you to ring the Athenaeum and register a ticket. They're free, but you need to register. So thanks very much.